done by the courts, not by the legislature, by me. Number two, it's true, somewhere in that bill of ours, 70 pages, there's the mention of the word Planned Parenthood. But it describes a person on a technical advisory board about payment structures. There's no requirement or no participation of Planned Parenthood in our health care plan. With regards to judges, I appointed probably 50 or 60 judges at the trial court level, mostly, the great majority. These were former prosecutors, 80% of them former prosecutors. We don't have a litmus test for appointing judges, asking them if they're pro-life or not pro-life. These are people going after crimes and the like. I didn't get to appoint any Supreme Court justices. I am pro-life. And the Massachusetts Citizens for Life and several other family-oriented groups wrote a letter 2 weeks ago and said they'd watched my record, that I was an avidly pro-life governor. I'm a pro-life governor. I am a pro-life individual. And I have to be honest here. It is, this is not the time to be doubting people's words or questioning their integrity. I'm pro-life. By the way, is there any possibility that I've ever made a mistake in that regard? I didn't see something that I should have seen? Possibly. But you can count on me as President of the United States to pursue a policy that protects the life of the unborn, whether here in this country or overseas. And I'll reverse the policies of this president. Thank you.
Mr. Speaker, he says you're questioning his integrity.
I'll yield to Senator Santorum.
Senator?
I just want to make out one point, and a lot of legislators here in the room, and they know this to be the truth, that if you write a piece of legislation and you say medical care and you do not specifically mention that abortion is not covered, we know from every court decision at the state and federal level that the federal courts and state courts will require it. That is someone every governor knows, every state legislator knows. And so when Governor Romney did not put that in the bill, you can't say, oh, gee, surprise, the court made us cover abortions. He knew very well that the court would make them cover abortions. That's number one. Number two, what we're talking about here is someone who's not going to just check the boxes and say, yes, I'm pro-life. We got a lot of folks who just whisper into the microphone that they're pro-life, and then you have other people go out and fight the battle and defend life and come out of the trenches and actually work to make sure that the dignity of every human life, innocent human life in this country, is protected. And I've done that. And I would say, in contrast with Speaker Gingrich, who on the social issues, in particular when he was Speaker and even afterwards, they were pushed in the back bench. There was a pledge to America that the Congress tried to put together in 2010. I got phone calls ringing off the hook that Speaker Gingrich went in and told them, keep social issues out of the pledge to America for the 2010 elections. And we need you to come in and help to try to convince these folks to put that back into the pledge. We don't need someone who in the back rooms is going to go say social issues in the front or in the back of the bus and then come out here and try to pretend they're pro-life.
Governor Romney and then Speaker Gingrich, he mentioned you both. Please, quickly.
Senator, I admire the fact that you've been a stalwart defender of pro-life, and in a state where that's not easy. I was also a governor in a state where being pro-life was not easy. And I battled hard. What came to my desk was a piece of legislation that said we're going to redefine when life begins. In our state, we said life began at conception. The legislature wanted to change that, to say, no, we're going to do it at implantation. I vetoed that. The legislature also said we want to allow cloning for purposes of creating new embryos for testing. I vetoed that. The legislature did not want abstinence education. I pushed and pursued abstinence education. There was an effort to also have a morning after pill provided to, as I recall, young women in their teens. I can't remember the exact age. I vetoed that. I stood as a pro-life governor, and that's why the Massachusetts Pro-Life Family Association supported my record as governor, endorsed my record as governor. I did my very best to be a pro-life governor. I will be a pro-life president. I'm proud of that. I wrote about it in my book. My record is solid. I appreciate your record. I hope you'll appreciate mine.
Mr. Speaker, he mentioned you specifically, then we want to move on, but please respond.
Well, the fact is that I voted with Henry Hyde, who was the leading pro-life advocate in the House for a generation. I had a 98.6% pro-life voting record. The only one we disagreed on was welfare reform, which they scored for reasons we never understood. But otherwise, it was a perfect record on pro-life. When I was Speaker, we twice passed a bill that actually Rick was very active in to end partial birth abortion. Twice it was vetoed by Clinton, but twice we passed it. In the 2010 election, the freshman class has the highest percentage of pro-life members ever in history, and my job was to maximize their winning. And the fact is, we won a huge victory in 2010 with the largest number of pro-life members ever elected in a freshman class.
All right, let's move on. Let's take another question. Congressman, I'll bring you in on this one. Let's take a question now from social media. Question. Before we move on, you want in on this issue? They want you in on this issue. Would you like in on this issue?
But John, once again, it's a medical subject, and I'm a doctor, you know. No, I do want to make a couple comments, because I can remember the very early years studying obstetrics, and I was told, and it was before the age of abortion, and I was told, taking care of a woman that's pregnant, you have two patients. And I think that solves a lot of the problem about, you know, when life begins and all. But I also experienced a time later on in my training in the 1960s when the culture was changing. The Vietnam War was going on, the drugs were there, and pornography came in, and abortion became prevalent even though it was illegal. So the morality of the country changed, but then the law followed up. When the morality changed, it will reflect on the laws. The law is very important. We should have these laws, but law will not correct the basic problem, and that's the morality of the people that we must do. Now, just very, very briefly, I want to talk a little bit about that funding, because the flaw there is if you send funding out and you say, well, you can have it for birth control but not for abortion, all funds are fungible. Even funds that go to any hospital, if you say, well, it's not for birth control and it's not for Planned Parenthood, it's not for abortion, if you send it to the hospital, they can still use that money. This is an indictment of government-run medicine, because you never can sort that all out. You need the government out of that business, or you will always argue over who's paying what bills.
Very quickly, Senator.
I think that was directed at me, and so I would just say this. Congressman Paul has a national right-to-life voting record of 50%, which is pretty much what Harry Reid's national right-to-life voting record is. So to go out and say that, you know, you're someone who stands up for the right to life, you repeatedly vote against bills on a federal level to promote the right to life, and you say that this is an individual personal decision or state decision. Life should be protected, and you should have the willingness to stand up on a federal level and any level of government and protect what our what our Declaration protects, which is the right of our Creator to life, and that is a federal issue, not a state issue.
Quickly, sir.
Well, just for the record, I wasn't even thinking about you when I was giving my statement, so you are overly sensitive. But it is true that we have a disagreement on how we approach it. I followed what my understanding is of the Constitution, and it does allow for the states to deal with difficult problems. Matter of fact, it allows the states to deal with almost all the problems if you look at it. It is not given, these powers aren't given to the Congress. I see abortion as a violent act. All other violence is handled by the states. Murder, burglary, violence, that's a state issue. So don't try to say that I'm less pro-life because I want to be particular about the way we do it and allow the states the prerogative. This is the solution. This is the solution, because if we would allow the states to write their laws, take away the jurisdiction by a majority vote in the Congress, you repeal Roe versus Wade overnight instead of waiting year after year to change the court system.
All right, we need to take one more break, gentlemen. Stand by. Less than 35 hours away now from the polls opening right here in South Carolina, a state that is crucial, often decisive in Republican presidential politics. Stay with us to hear the candidates' closing arguments to the voters of a state that takes pride in picking presidents. The Southern Republican presidential debate. We're in Charleston, South Carolina tonight. Gentlemen, we're running out of time. Time flies. I wish we could stay all night. I don't suspect you have campaigning to do. I don't suspect you'll agree to that. I didn't think so. You know the history of this state. We're inside 35 hours now from voters in South Carolina going to the polls. And we all know the history of this state. In modern times, the winner of the South Carolina Republican primary has gone on to be your party's nominee. We have an interesting race at the moment. Senator Santorum wins Iowa. Governor Romney wins New Hampshire. Everybody's waiting to see. Most people believe if Governor Romney wins here, he would be the prohibitive favorite. I want each of you, since we have a short time left, and I'll start on the end, we'll come down the line. Congressman Paul, make your case. Make your case. South Carolina essentially faces this decision. Not so fast, let's continue the race, or embrace Governor Romney. Make your case to the people of South Carolina in these final hours.
Well, South Carolina is known for their respect for liberty. And a lot of people will ask the question, in a way, what will you do for South Carolina, or what will you do for New Hampshire, what will you do for the various states? But if you understand liberty, it's equal for everybody. It benefits everybody. So if you have a protection of liberty, which is the purpose of the Constitution, protection individual liberty, and that means you protect the private property rights system. And if you do that, that benefits everybody. And this is what we have to do, is convince people that we can bring people together with the understanding of what those beliefs were that made America great. And it is freedom. It isn't this continued spending money and debt. This is the reason we're in a mountain of debt, and we have to deal with it. We really never even got around to talking about that tonight. And one of my very modest proposals, is in the one first year, cut $1 trillion out of the budget to get started. Because the debt bubble is the great burden. It's a burden to all of us. And as I mentioned earlier, these programs are going to go down if we don't get our budget under control. And we have to be willing to look at overseas spending and all of the entitlement system here in this country.
Mr. Speaker.
Well, let me start. I want to thank CNN, and I want to thank the people of Charleston for a very, very interesting and very useful evening. And we have a real challenge. It is imperative that we defeat Barack Obama. This is, I believe, the most dangerous president of our lifetime. And if he is reelected after the disaster he has been, the level of radicalism of his second term will be truly frightening. But in addition to beating Obama, we have to have a team victory in the Senate and the House, and we have to have a principled victory. So the American people send a signal that in January of 2013, they want very dramatic, very deep change in Washington. I believe the only way to create the momentum is to be able to overcome his billion-dollar campaign with a series of debates which decisively convince the American people that a Saul Alinsky radical who is incompetent cannot be reelected, and I hope you will vote for me on Saturday as the person who could do that.
Governor Romney.
I agree with a lot of what these last two men have just said. I think this is an absolutely critical election. I believe that the founders took very careful thought in the preparation of the words of our Declaration of Independence that said that the Creator had endowed us with certain unalienable rights. Not the state, but the Creator. Among them, life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. And by virtue of those words, the pursuit of happiness, this became the place on the planet where we were able to pursue our dreams as we might choose. People came here from all over the world wishing to pursue happiness in their own way. And that has made us the most powerful economic engine in the world, where we can guard freedom because our military is the strongest in the world, coming from that powerful economic engine. This president's changing that. He's changing the very nature of America. He's turning us not from a merit society, an opportunity society, where people are free to choose their own course, but instead he's making us an entitlement society, where people think they're entitled to what other people have, where government takes from some and gives to others. That has never been the source of American greatness. We need to return to the principles upon which this country was founded. Our president said, I think, in a very revealing way, that he wants to fundamentally transform America. He's wrong. We need to restore the values that made America the hope of the earth. And I understand those values. I will do everything in my power to restore those values by keeping America free, by fighting for free enterprise, by standing up to President Obama and pointing out how he has made it almost impossible for our private sector to reboot. I will get America working again. I will defeat Barack Obama and keep America as it's always been, the shining city on a hill. Thank you.
Senator Santorum.
I agree with Governor Romney 100% in what he said about what the stakes are. question is, who's the best person to take on President Obama?